Welcome to Paradigm Shift TV 314. This is your brother, Pianki Patama.
Hello, bro. You know it's Tuesday. This is the Tuesday Takeover show.
Really, bro?
Yeah, bro. So welcome to Paradigm Shift TV 314, where I will be your host, and I go by the name of NoboDy. I always trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody. Welcome back to another episode of Paradigm Shift TV 314. And y'all know me. Today I'm going to be your host, and I go by the name of NoboDy. Always trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody. And that is Jesus Christ. On today's show, I got my one brother with me, man, Byron Washington. How you doing, Byron, bro? Introduce yourself to the platform, man.
How you doing, family? This is your brother Byron Washington, man. Just your average neighborhood brother out here, just trying to spread a message and talk the good game with the people.
What's up, man? Earlier today, man, you know, we got the Let's Dialogue Facebook Messenger group and everything. And y'all know, well, for those who don't know, we have a mixture of Christians, Hebrews, atheists, agnostics, 5%ers, a little bit of everything that's in there. And today, man, I saw you in there going in, bro. Want to speak a little bit on a couple of conversations that we were having in the group, and you just feel about it?
Yeah, man. It was interesting. We just one of the brothers just brought up something about the Exodus narrative, kind of wondering why why specifically God would choose frogs as a way to strike catastrophe against the Egyptians during the 10 plagues, and wondering like was frogs supposed to be the thing that's supposed to be some type of like killer agent or something like that. So really just kind of breaking down the scripture for what it actually means and what was going on at the time and the different levels of what was going on within the Exodus and the 10 plagues narrative. So that was interesting hearing from the brother.
Right. So what was his contentions, Diamond? As you were saying, he thought he wanted to know was frogs some kind of death agent, or well, overall, why would God send frogs in the first place?
Yeah, so first it was wondering like why, like was frogs supposed to be this tool to send death, and I was kind of shocked because I was like, the narrative doesn't say frogs were sending death. And if you read the narrative, I quoted the biblical verse, and I used I think I used the CSB or the NASB, and I use those verses in particular because they're more modern English vernacular that we use today, and they've taken from multiple sources from the Old Testament, so you have a better breadth of knowledge about what's going on. And the brother came back and used the King James version, and particularly in the King James version, it used the term smite, right? And he was like, so what was God trying to smite the people with frogs? And so particularly the verse, I was like, no, the King James version, it says smite the corners with frogs. And then I told him, like, King James, where you can use the word smite, is not a wrong word, because there's multiple definitions for smite, but the terms that I use is more strike. And he was trying to say, well, what is a plague? And I kind of had to define what an actual plague is. It's not just something that's a disease. You can have a plague of animals, plagues of insects and frogs and stuff like that. So the brother, so we got that underway, and I just told him, like, hey, you got to make sure that you use the up-to-date biblical vernacular, because you try to use the King James, and if you don't come from using that type of English on a day-to-day fashion and those words, you're not gonna really understand it the way you should. And so we got that out of the way.
I'll have to break that down to my brother Pianki sometimes too, because he tried to say, well, do that mean that it's translated bad? I say no, because you have word for word translations, you have thought for thought translations, and I let him know when you read the King James, you got to understand how they would have understood it at that time. So it's not that it's written wrong. We are just modern people trying to read into something that was written before us. You know what I'm saying? But
right. And then so we got into the point to where he was like, then and they were just like, well, if that's the case, it was why did God choose frogs? I mean, it wasn't abnormal to have frogs around, around the waterways in Egypt and stuff like that. And so I tried to explain to him, like, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And so I literally grew up by the Mississippi River and all the bayous and waterways around that in swamp areas. So I'm familiar with just like the Egyptians, of growing up around major waterways.
Right.
And so when you grow up around major waterways, like you used to frogs, turtles, insects, all this, all the animals that kind of live and breathe around waterways. So no, the Egyptians weren't strangers to frogs or anything like that. But in particular, like in the Exodus narrative, God told Moses to tell Pharaoh that not only am I going to like bring a bunch of frogs on y'all, and I'm paraphrasing right now, I'm just gonna talk down, but like it's gonna be an infestation in your household, in your bread bowls, in your bed. And so I was trying to explain to him, it's one thing to have frogs around your house. It's another thing to it literally being so much, because they were trying to say like, man, it was just a nuisance. What God thought he was just going to make people move out of nuisance. And I said, no, bro, it's more than a nuisance. Like, it's talking about like you going to sleep with a bunch of frogs in your bed. Like you waking up in the morning and going to use the bathroom, there's frogs all over the place. You can't even cook because you got frogs everywhere. And if you know anything about just, frogs in general, man, you're talking about the excrements that's coming out the frogs and stuff like that. So, and I had to kind of got real, like, man, imagine a man trying to lay down with his wife and his lady, and you go to the bed and it's a whole bunch of frogs in there. Like ain't nothing going on then. like bro, so I say, it was more than just saying like frogs. They were used to frogs, but you talk about an infestation or something.
Plague.
Like, man, it's a plague, yeah. And so they're like, no, man, it can't be something more than that. Cause why would you be worried about frogs or whatever? And I'm like, bro, like we live in, we live in the 21st century here. But imagine like if you didn't have a house with air conditioning and pesticides and all kinds of stuff like that. Like, bro, infestations is just more than just an irritant. And so they were saying like,
how much work could you get if it's a plague of something, but let's just say frogs? How much work could you get done if you go outside and it's just tons and tons and tons of frogs? You can't really do too much. Like
no. So then they try to use narrative and saying like, well, it shows here that Pharaoh and his priests made frogs too, and then the Pharaoh goes and asks Moses to tell God to get rid of the frogs. So it must have been there must have been too many frogs once the priest got involved. And I said, no, this. But I said, no, let's look at the narrative. See, God already told through Moses that he was gonna basically infest all of Egypt with frogs. So just because Pharaoh's priests make frogs doesn't mean that there wasn't already infestation that had overabundance. And it was so much that God that Pharaoh didn't go to his own priests to get rid of frogs. He had to go to Moses and say, and Moses, get these frogs up out of here. I'm gonna let your people go. Like, it's too much. And so they was like, why how did Moses how did Pharaoh's priests do the same thing Moses did? And I said, man, if you look at it from the time Moses came back in Egypt, right? Like the biblical narrative doesn't say that Pharaoh's priests are and their gods didn't have power, because some type of power, because you looking at the first incident, Moses' staff turns into a snake.
Yep.
They make two snakes, but guess what happens? Moses' snake eat those snakes. And so it was never saying they didn't have power. It was just saying the God of Moses was greater than, was more powerful. And that's the whole narrative with the plays. It's like it's a supernatural thing going on, saying like whatever gods that the gods of Egypt have, the God of Moses is much greater than. And so
I'm gonna cut you off, but they be letting me know sometimes that these people ain't really, and I'm not shaming nobody, but they be letting me know that these people haven't really read the full story. We learn, of course, as Bible believers and Bible teachers ourselves, we learn in 101. First off, you read the whole chapter. If you're not gonna read the whole chapter, you at least read the verse above and the verse below. And this just goes to show that a lot of people may know the narrative of Moses and Pharaoh, but it seems to me that some of them haven't actually read the entire story of it, because if they did, some of these questions they could answer on their own, you know what I'm saying? But it just goes to show.
It's funny you say, because I said the same thing, and they were asking questions. I'm like, well, just read the text. Like, I don't have to explain it. If you just read the text, it tells you what happened. Now, if you want to dismiss the biblical text, that's your prerogative. But if you're gonna come to me questioning the biblical text, you have to read the whole thing in its totality to understand what's going on. And so, that's the whole thing. And then another brother was like, well, no, it's really symbolic. It really means like the staff didn't turn into no snake. It just means that they had degrees, love, and all stuff like that. And I was just more like, man, look, if you want to kind of make up that stuff, that's on you. But I mean, if you look at the ancient commentary, nobody ever thought of that. That's some new modern stuff.
Yeah, that's new. And like people like to say, well, oh, you only find this in the Bible. You only find no. If you go read ancient literature, ancient texts, they didn't have no problem with the supernatural and miracles and all that stuff. Nobody. So that was normal for them. You know what I'm saying? So us, well, not necessarily you and I, but just say those type of people, y'all reading this stuff with a 21st century mind frame. Back then, of course, like you said, imagine trying to tell somebody, let me use this as an example. Imagine back in the biblical times, me trying to tell somebody, hey man, I'm going to be able to talk to you, and we're not going to even be in the same room, let alone in the same city. And I'm going to be able to talk to you not through a letter, but as if you was in my face. Back then, somebody probably would have been like, well, hey, that's supernatural. But then what are me and you doing right now? We on a cell phone talking to each other without being stuff that we do today probably would have seemed supernatural to them back then, compared to the stuff that they did back then seems supernatural to these type of guys today. It's just modern, All right.
And so they were like, well, I mean, it just seemed kind of odd because I mean, Egypt, they used to natural stuff. They used to floods and having stuff like that. And I was just like, well, if you look at typically in the Bible, in the biblical narratives, like when God does supernatural stuff, he uses natural means. Right. It don't mean like the Egyptians are not, they weren't it wasn't brand new for them to have frogs, but what he did is like gave them like a whole bunch of frogs. Or if it's insects, they weren't, if it was locusts, they've seen locusts before. They probably had locust migration to infestation, but they never had it like this.
Right.
And then with Moses telling them like, oh no, this was going to happen, and Moses controlling it. So the whole thing is, and I was kind of telling like the spookism is something more modernist that y'all come up with, but in ancient days or in ancient times, I should say, using natural laws, but using them in overabundance as a way to expand, that's not something new. I mean, you and I, we Christians, so our Savior was born through natural means. Well, when I say born, like actually, not conceived, but born through natural means. So God could have, because they're like, well, why God didn't do this? God didn't do that. And I was like, well, I mean, God could have he just could have formed Jesus Christ out of just nothing and just snapped his fingers and he would appear. But he used natural means for it to happen to show a reason, because he made this, everything is his creation anyway. So he can use it as he sees fit. And so they're kind of like, well, I don't know why God would do that. God, I said, well, you know what? That's not really my place to question. And if you look at ancient days, like they don't really have things. There's no concept of like, oh, I don't know why God would do this or do that. Like, I mean, it's God. And like, if God is God, like
he can do what he wants.
He can do what he wants. Like especially with his creation.
Even if he would have did it whatever way they can think of, guess what? If he would have did it that way, somebody would have came along and just been like, well, why he didn't do it this way? So I mean, it don't have to fit. It don't have to fit their narrative. You know what I'm saying? For it to be true or not.
And so and then we talked about the same thing that we said before about the whole. Well, why say that? See, God knew what he was doing because he hardened Pharaoh's heart and this, that, and the third, and I had to explain again, like, man, look, the harden of the heart thing, y'all, if y'all looking at, because he used the King James version again, and I said, you got to understand, harden of the heart does not mean that he made Pharaoh change his mind. But he just basically gave him, like, he knew this is what Pharaoh wanted to do. Like, okay, I'm gonna give you what you want, but I'm gonna have to show you.
No, and you know, as Christians, we get that all the time. People say, "Well, why did God make?" And then it's like, and then whenever we give that answer, they make it like, "Oh, you trying to cover up for God?" No, this is how it's taught. It's taught in this way. If it was taught the way you said, I wouldn't have no problem. If God did change Pharaoh's mind, if the Bible taught it that way, it is what it is. But that's not how it's taught. Like you said, you can go read the whole 10 plays. The whole 10 plays was giving Pharaoh opportunity to change his mind 10 times. He didn't change his mind. So that harden your heart part, all God was saying was, like you said, God pretty much gave in to him. Okay, I'm gonna give you what you want to do. Like that's what it was. Like, come on, man.
I mean, and everybody, you know, and people know that, man. It's just weird, bro. So then the conversation went from there, and then they started talking about some metaphysical stuff or whatever. I was just kind of like, I tuned out. But the conversation went, and I had to explain to them. They were like, well, why this and why in America this, that, and the third, and why we got this interpretation. And so what I said was that, well, one thing about America religious thing, Americanism in general, right? Like Americanism allows for all religions to basically stray or do different things. So it's not just a Christianity thing. We talk about all denominations and stuff like that. But you look at and I gave an example, like Hinduism, for example, like the American versions of Hinduism, which is basically formed in like New Ageism and stuff like that. Like they don't follow what they do in like India and surrounding areas. Like their Hinduism is like more the original. When America gets Hinduism, they do some weird stuff. And I say same thing with like Islam. Like Islam practiced in Mecca and Medina in the Middle East, and then you got American versions of Islam, which is the Nation of Islam, Moor Science Temple, and then you got like even the Hebrew space. And I said, and I told them, I'm not even talking about just the Jewish people, but like I'm talking about the Hebrew people that live in Palestine right now, that live in all the way in China, they live in Africa too. Like in America, this idea of Black Hebrew Israelitism and stuff like that, and the way they practice it, wearing these Power Ranger suits and all that, like bro, that's something American. Like that's not genuine to like stuff like that. And I say, and we got that in Christianity too. We got Mormons, we got Jehovah's Witness, we got SDAs and stuff like that. So like, I'm just trying to tell them, like, you gotta understand, like, we deal with America, like it's a freedom, but at the same time, like you can't judge ancient religions or ancient faith systems based on like what Americans do with it. So you can't do that.
I was just telling Chris Harris that the other day, because he was asking, okay, what do I subscribe to as doctrine? And I was like, I subscribe to orthodoxy. And he's trying to explain to me, well, evidently he didn't know what orthodoxy meant, but he's trying to explain to me like which one am I for? And I'm like, I'm not for anyone. I'm for the original orthodoxy handed down by the apostles to the church fathers to us. And so, and like you said, I would like to ask you, well, why are there so many denominations? There are so many denominations because people stay away from orthodoxy, but we still know what orthodoxy is. So we can point out, like you said, Mormonism as a false cult, or 7-day Adventists or Jehovah's Witnesses, and people be like, why? Because we have orthodoxy. Orthodoxy lets you know who's teaching heresy. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I know them as non-believers, they don't get that.
Right. And the thing is that even when they get on the whole thing about denominations and like, man, they got all these denominations, and I always be like, well, if you really look at it, they all still adhere to the core tenets of biblical faith. They may disagree on secondary or tertiary issues, which is fine. And that's something in-house in Christianity we have to clean up to where we don't necessarily have to split up just because we disagree on certain things. Because even the ancient churches, they didn't all agree on like the second, third, but it was still one church. So that's an in-house thing that we have to fix. I'll admit that, but I'm not gonna sit here and say like somebody who like Baptist and Methodist are like, oh no, they don't believe in the same thing. Like, no, yes they do. They believe in the core tenets and orthodoxy principles of Christianity. They may differ like on church government, on like certain things, like how you do this ritual and how you interpret. But they none of them gonna sit here and say like the 10 plagues were metaphysical. Like no, they're gonna be like, no, that actually happened. Like so, that's something that we as Christians gotta like let them know. Like even when y'all try to split us up in denominations, all of us agree on the core tenets like the Bible is true, the word of God is true, stuff like that. The things that y'all, but again, as unbelievers, y'all trying to pick on, well, this church do this and this church do that. Yeah, but I can tell you the churches that are that fall within biblical orthodoxy, and then those that are cults. Like we know this. We can tell you this.
Who don't have different beliefs. Like even a husband and wife, you could be with your wife for 20 years, y'all ain't gonna agree on everything. So it's like, so that don't mean y'all marriage is not true. And like you said,
Right.
we have different denominations over small secular reasons. Let's just say like Baptists or whatever. A Baptist church may believe that you have to get baptized. And then the other churches who may believe that you don't got to get baptized. Well, now they carry the name Baptist. That don't mean that they don't believe in Jesus. That don't mean that they don't think that he died. He and died. Like you said, they still hold to the base tendencies of Christianity, even though we may have splits just based off small stuff like that. You have churches who split because somebody believes in a pre-tribulation rapture or post-tribulation rapture. None of that is not going to save us or send somebody to hell. It's just a different belief about a certain subject in the Bible, and that's pretty much it,
Right. And then we always tell people at the core, like, nobody gonna have it 100% right. Like, it's impossible if you don't have it. I don't care who you are. Like, even the apostles were still figuring. Like, if you read the biblical text, they were still figuring things out as the Holy Spirit gave guidance. But ain't nobody gonna have it all right until Christ come back and set up his kingdom. And even that, like you just said, people disagree on how that's gonna happen. So it's whatever, man. And just that was interesting. And then the last thing that they got to, they were going over the whole because it got more people into it, the issue of like the Hermetic and Semitic and stuff like that. And I found it interesting that it was more non-Christians that were just basically, they had issues with kind of like the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, because even they did their research and like, wait a second, like this idea of calling all Africans Hamitic and all other African, non-African Shemitic and stuff like that, like that's more new. Like you don't see anything ancient post Genesis narrative, right? Like post Genesis, you don't see people being labeled as being Shemitic or Hamitic. Even in the Bible, you don't even see those terms anymore. Like you only see the terms Hamitic, Japhetic, and Semitic when you talk about just lumping all kind of people groups together. Honestly, you get that from Europeans when they start to like try to classify people. And I say, now I would reject that term the way they do it. I'm not saying the biblical narrative but the way they do it by like skin tone and race, they doing it so they can split up people and basically say like, it's racist in my opinion. So even when Hebrew Israelites start saying like, oh no, I don't mess with no Africans, y'all Hamites. I'm like, bro, like the second that you say that, like you realize you feeding into a European racist narrative.
No,
like,
we don't follow the white man. The white man the devil. Read, okay.
And then the first thing they go to, they Zondervan. Well, you go into Zondervan, it's like, oh, so you go to the white man. So you don't have no problem with the Zondervan Bible.
Bro, I can get Captain 10K on that. When I showed him where Zondervan got the meaning of that from, like I say, they like to read the Zondervan dictionary on that point because it say that the Negro is not African, but they don't know what talking point that comes from, which is the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were saying that the Negroes were not African because they were saying that they wasn't human at all. They were saying that they were animals, but they don't get that.
and so I always talk to them like, bro, if you can't trace to me the connections between the Hermetic and Semitic and Negro hypothesis, Darwinism, and the whole even Caucasoid and Negroid and Mongoloid stuff, like that all comes from the same era, and it's basically Europeans trying to classify races to find some kind of way to make sure that the European race is on top. Like in all of those different theories, where Darwinism or the Caucasoid, Negroid, or the Hermetic, Japhetic, and not the Negro stuff. If you look at it and read the whole thing, at the end of the day, it's always the European man that's always the one that's on top, the one that's the most developed, the most evolved, and all kind of stuff like that. And I'm like, bro, I'm like, if y'all don't see that, then and you trying to use these narratives today, like, and they're dated, and like you just said, like whenever they go there, I'm like, bro, when they say not the Negroes, they call you basically a beast.
They call you an animal. Yeah. I can pull it up right now. It's a book called Negro to a Beast, and I pulled it up in that debate that I had with Cap to even show him. Now, of course, he gonna deny it because it goes against what they believe. But to me, it's like these people running from God so hard, man. Like, even if you're telling them 1 + 1 = 2, just because it came from Jesus, oh no, we don't want to accept that, or no, we want to believe. It's like, are we searching truth, or are we just searching just to be right? Because if we're seeking out the truth, then let's come to an understanding. I mean, it's more than just being pro-black. What's wrong with being pro-truth? You know what I'm saying? So I really don't get a lot of them dudes and where they're coming from, especially when they make the claim that I'm for my people, or I do my research and I do my studying. And it's like, well, how can you claim to be for your people and do your studying, but then either you're being disingenuous with our people, or you do know the truth and you're lying to our people, or you're ignorant of the truth. One of those three. You can't say you're for your people and you researching all that, but then come back with some other type of rhetoric that these people come back with. And when somebody like you or I or any one of our Christian apologist brothers try to come and tell you the truth about something, it's like, oh, you're twisting this, or you're saying this to fit your narrative. No, I'm saying it because this is what I believe, because this is true. I'm not going to switch my belief because I'm talking to you. But if I'm talking to you and you say something I don't believe, I'm just correcting you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Not that I'm just trying to flip the narrative, but I know sometimes a lot of them don't get that, man.
And it's crazy because, bro, I got a cousin-in-law that their whole family converted to the Hebrew Israelism, and I still try to work with them, but it's one of those things, like, they get in and get hard headed, and he was telling me, like, the same thing kind of stuff that Dante Fortune to pull out. Well, look in West Africa, they call these places, this was Judah, stuff like that, and I would be like, okay, let's just say I don't agree with that whole thing, but let's say that's true. Let's say that this portion of the land was Judah and it was Israelites. And I always say, okay, so account for me how all of West Africa and major parts of Central Africa are all of a sudden Israelite people. And he looked at me like, what you talking about? And I said, bro, do you know how large West Africa alone is? It's bigger than the continental United States. So if you're talking about an area that's bigger than the continental United States, and you telling me an area the size of like Delaware.
My sister nephew did a breakdown video of the word Judah, and she actually got some Africans. Okay. I know if you saw it or not. I'm gonna say yeah.
Oh yeah. I agree with you.
Africa, break it.
Bro, it's so weird, bro, because I'm just like, when they do that, bro, I'm just like, bro, and I just giving this, I say, bro, if what y'all say is true, if you are correct, if you say there's a kingdom in West Africa that was Israelites, and mind you, I'm one of the ones that will say there are probably some Hebrews or Hebrew Israelites in West Africa, because just after the 70 they dispersed all over. So I'm willing to say, like, yeah, there probably was some Hebrew Israelites that went to West Africa that intermingled with everybody, like just like everywhere else. And so I'll say I'm willing to give you that. But when you sit here and say everybody from the transatlantic slave trade, and I'm like, bro, do you know how many African tribes and nations was involved with transatlantic? Do you know how many people came from Africa?
And then watch this too. It also denounced the narrative, because now first off, Deuteronomy 28 and 68 not a prophecy. Second off, when you read that stuff, when you read Deuteronomy, it lets you know that the Israelites were going to sell themselves into slavery, not that they were going to be sold from Africans to Europe. So you have to take Hebrew Israelites who follow their doctrine. You have to take historical context out of context and try to fit it into the biblical context that you're taking out of context just to make it true. So it's like, how can you say that the Israelites, that everybody from the transatlantic slave trade from West Africa are Israelites because we were sold over here, when the Bible says that not only would you sell yourself, but it also says that no man will buy you. Then we get bought. Then our ancestors get bought and sold like it wasn't no tomorrow. So like that totally debunks that whole doctrine. But people.
And then they go in that whole, you gonna go back to Egypt and like, well, Egypt is America, and I'm like, no, actually, if you look at historical evidence, actually Israelites did go back into Egypt. Like
Yeah,
we have
that's the whole
documentation
breakdown.
on ships. Like this actually did happen. And I think you said this before. The biblical narrative, any curses that happen to you only gonna last for 4 generations.
Like, come on,
So
man. And that's what the Bible says.
and then two, if you are a full Bible believer, if you believe in Jesus Christ and you are and you have been born again Christian, then whatever curses that were laid upon you by
Free,
your acceptance in Jesus Christ, you free from that curse.
free.
So
And this is
so
our fixing.
so 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 it's like you doing so many double negatives upon the Bible and trying to make an excuse. And I'm like, bro, just why are we enslaved here? Why are we enslaved here? Because sin
That's it.
exists. It,
The
al-
heart of man.
it always exists. We already know through history that there was already slave trade going on in Africa before the Europeans ever started their slave trade. So we know the Europeans didn't start it because they just tapped into a system that was already going on.
Right.
We know that slave trade is still going on to this day.
Right now
So
in Libya.
it's not
Yep.
over. So it's not over. So I'm wondering when y'all say that. I'm like,
You
so
faded out,
if
bro.
we're in America, how is it still going on if the prophecy? Well, we gotta get back to laws, statutes, and commandments. Like,
That's
how does that how is that going to work? Like, you don't even know what law, statutes, and commandments are supposed to represent, because you can't say you believe in Christ and say we need to go back. Like, you trying to use the schoolmaster for stuff that like, bro, we beyond the schoolmaster. And I'm not saying you don't use a schoolmaster, but bro, you ain't even graduated yet. Like, I don't like how you I don't know how you read I don't know how you could be a faithful Hebrew Israelite and read the New Testament. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I have more understanding for those who are just Old Testament only
Testament only.
or Torah only, because at least
Yeah.
that. But if you're a New Testament, I'm like, you basically gotta like jump through hoops, reinterpret like Gentiles. You gotta
Shit.
like say Paul didn't say what Paul really meant
Yeah.
when he was clear on what he meant. Like, I'm
Paul
like, bro,
started
it's a
Christianity. Jesus only done away with the sacrifice. This the point they give me for the Hebrews who believe in the New Testament. They'll read the point where the Bible says, "Now one jot or one tittle shall pass away from the law unless all is fulfilled." It would be like, "Well, see, Jesus didn't come to do away with the law," and then we'd be like, "How come y'all don't sacrifice animals?" Well, Jesus was the sacrifice. Well, ain't that one jot or one tittle being removed from the law? Like, come on, you can't have it both ways. Like, it's either all fulfilled or it's not. And we try to get them to see, like, when you read the New Testament lets you know that God was going to come with a better covenant. So why would you want to be under the better covenant? Like, what's wrong with? I don't know,
bro. And they use that verse like, "I have not come to destroy the law of the field." See, he didn't destroy the law. And I'm like, bro, he's talking about that before his death and resurrection. So he's actually still under the terms of the law as he's born, when he's coming to fulfill all of the law as Jesus Christ. In his death, he basically puts a death in, because the law only points to death. Like, we know that Paul teaches that. Like, no man could fulfill the law, because if you could, then you would be Jesus. Therefore, if you can't fulfill the law, you sin. Therefore, sin equals to death. But since Jesus fulfilled all of the law and he conquered death, he fulfilled. It's like a contract, bro. It's like one of those things to where,
it's
and I break it
completed.
down. It's like, bro, it's a sports contract. Like, you in Dallas, so like Dak Prescott just signed his contract, right? Like, he has to fulfill the terms of his contract before he get his new contract. That doesn't mean if he gets a new contract, that means they have to tear up his old contract, but they're not gonna tear it up because he has to fulfill all of his original contract. Like, it's that simple.
It's like some of them don't know what the word fulfill means. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like they don't get it's completed. That's how it's completed. And what the Bible says, that which has waxed old is ready to fade out and go away. You don't put new wine in old wineskins because it'll burst. Like, it's simple. Like, I don't even get how they can read those verses and not understand that we are under a new covenant. Like, I mean, it says it so many times. It even goes as far as to say it's a new covenant, a better covenant, unlike the covenant given to our fathers of old. So it's telling you it's not the old covenant. But I don't get it. It's there word for word, like, you know.
And nobody, bro. It's what we talked about also in the call at the end of it, bro. We was talking about like the whole culture thing, like just
who was on the
culture.
call, bro? Who was on the call?
Man, I wish I could take. Well, we had Melvin was on the call. Brother Zion was on the call. I can't pronounce the other brother name. It's like a nuke something, but his last name was Bay. So I'm
I know we got
assuming he
some
has some type of,
from the group. Yeah.
yeah, some newer dudes, and they were just talking about
That's cool.
like culture, right? And there was
Right.
like the brother was like, well, we ain't got no culture because we don't own anything. And I'm like, bro, that's not the definition of culture. Like culture does not mean you own anything. Like yes it is. I'm like, bro, and I broke down all the definitions of culture, and I'm like, you can't make up new definitions or something and just say that like that's what it is. That's not culture. And he's like, well, no, black people got culture. And I said, bro, here's the thing about black culture. Like black culture in America is still it's still in the process of being developed. Like if you look at world history, like other people have had like centuries and centuries to develop their cultural traditions and stuff like that. We necessarily haven't really had. We only had roughly 400, maybe 500 years max to really develop our culture, and then most of that was under oppression. So we still have we still are still developing our culture in America. And he said, so why it ain't African? Why it ain't African? And I said, A, because when we came over here, they took a lot from us, but we still retain some stuff. B, they took a bunch of different cultures in Africa and then mosh posh them all together. So you can't just say like you're not gonna just call one tribe the same as another tribe. Like you're not gonna call the Igbo the same as the Congolese and the same as the as because those are different cultures. They're all African, but they're different cultures. They got different backgrounds. So he was like, well, because like your funeral rights, like if you bury your dead, you don't control how you bury your dead, your funeral rights. And I was like, you a lie. And he was like, no, you don't. I say, bro, if I write how I want to be buried, like my people gonna bury me how I want to be buried.
Yeah, how you want to be buried? Yeah.
So then he says, brother says, well, I mean, in 1,500 years, you ain't got no control over because they can come and just dig yourself up. And I say, bro, in Egypt, they are still digging. They are digging people up. So that doesn't mean anything just because they dig you up after the fact. You don't have control of anything after you dead and gone and buried. So he was like, well, look at the mummification process. And I'm like, bro, you do realize we go through we do the same thing. It's called embalming. Like everybody gets embalmed. And why they preserve your body ain't gonna be preserved in America the way it is in Egypt and stuff like that. And I said, bro, the ancient Mayans had mummifications as well too. Egypt was different because of the climate and the geography. It allows for the bodies to be preserved. That's why it's so it doesn't
but they also miss out on this too. When it comes to the Egyptian culture, they were mummifying their pharaohs for a reason. When you read through the coffin text and the pyramid text and things like that, it lets you know that once these pharaohs passed through the afterlife and did the test of Mayat and wearing their heart on a feather, they mummified those pharaohs because they believed that those pharaohs was going to come back to this realm and that they would have to be able to identify their body. The practice went out of style. That's why they stopped doing it. Not because nobody made them. They stopped doing it because over time, nobody was coming back to their body. So it went out of practice. So him bringing up that ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Even people in Egypt today don't practice mummification like they did back in the ancient days because it was false. It was a false practice.
And my thing is, bro, when it comes to culture, and I'm like, look, Black culture in the Americas, but in the United States of America, I said these are a few things that are always involved with Black culture. One, you have an amalgamation of different African cultures that all coming together trying to figure stuff out. You have the influence of indigenous cultures of America influence on Black people, and you have the influence of European culture influence on Black people, and it all comes together under oppression to where you have this hodgepodge of Black culture. And he was like, well, why don't we have this? Why do we have this? And I said, brother, we are still developing. We have developed, but we are still developing a culture here. Like, these are things that still like it's a time thing. It's not really like it's not things going on. Like, bro, we're developing our culture over time, but we still have distinctives in Black culture in America that you can say, okay, that's Black culture. Music, food, dress, stuff like that. And I said the better question is, and it's a harder question, what is uniquely white American culture? Not European culture that's in America, but like what's white American culture? And I said that's a harder question because we can point to necessarily Black culture in America, but it's actually harder to point out white American culture that's unique from Europe, because anytime you try to say, well, bratwurst and and spaghetti and stuff like that. And I said, no, those are European cultures imported into America. Like I'm asking what in particular did they come up with? Because you can't really put the onus on Black people on this question, because people even scholars have said, like, basically American culture is really just a aspect of Black and Indigenous people's culture, and that's that's really what it is. Like that's, and it just repackaged. Like,
I don't really get why people. I mean, I get it sometimes, but I don't really get why people don't understand that America itself has its own culture. Other people in other countries want to move to America because of our culture. Like I ain't got nothing against my African ancestors. I love Africa people and all that good stuff, but I'm American. I wouldn't trade my culture in for no African culture. I don't stay in Africa. I've never been there. I like my, Christmases and Thanksgivings and birthdays and, you know what I'm saying, and Walmart and NFL games, NBA and WWE. That's our culture. That's American culture. So like these people, a lot of these people really think that if they move or switch over to African culture, that they'll be happier. Honestly, you're giving up your culture for someone else's culture. Now,
and you're gonna be miserable.
You're gonna be miserable. I don't eat probably half the foods that they eat in their cultures. I like hot dogs and hamburgers and tacos. That's my culture food. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And we know that culture comes from the land that you're in too. So I mean, like we don't have the same geography as they do in Africa. And it's like I say, it's no disrespect. It's love for my African ancestors, my African brothers and sisters there. But like we physically don't live in that climate, so we're not going to adjust to it. We don't come from that culture of food, music, stuff like that. But like you say, I'm proud of the Black American culture. Like this is where I come from.
We did this, so why would I give up what we built for somebody else's, Africa or not?
Right. And here's the kicker: if you go to Africa, which culture are you going to embrace? Because again, as African Americans, we are a mixture of a bunch of different African cultures. So you basically have to go to one and choose. So you're gonna go to Ghana, you're gonna go to Liberia, you're gonna go to Sierra Leone, you're gonna go to Nigeria. Like Libya, where you gonna go? Which one you gonna go to? Even our Kemetic brothers, just for our Kemetic brothers and sisters, but some people just embrace spirituality. Some people feel like that's their culture too. And I'm like, bro, you such a mixture of different African cultures. You literally have to choose one. But if you choose one, does that mean you dismiss the other one?
No, because they think it's some kind of utopia. They think everybody in Africa is doing the same thing the same way everywhere. Like you don't even find that in the United States. What we do in Texas is somewhat different than what they do in California, and we all on the same United States. So how can they think that a whole continent of 150 some countries or something like that? How can you think that these people do the same thing when, for example, Bloods do different things from the Crips, and and so like it's like that. Like I don't know, man. To me, I tie it into that part of the Bible where it says that people are going to be ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Because it's one thing to have a lot of information, but you don't have knowledge until you connect all the dots from the information that you have. And I don't think they do that.
Right. And that's really it, bro. And it was just interesting because even your boy Chris came into it a little bit in the discussion. It was kind of like, well, how you gonna interpret Bronze Age stuff and this, that, and the third? And I'm kind of just like, bro, like, I ain't want to dismiss the brother or anything like that. I'm just like, bro, this not really your lane. Well, I know that. I was like, this is not really your lane. This is not really your lane to talk about. Like, if you're gonna sit here and say all this stuff in mythology, and that's my point when people do that, because I'm like, the idea of all this stuff being anything being mythology, that's a more modernistic term. Like even stuff that we did, even worldviews that we disagree with, say like the Nubian worldview, the non-Christian Nubian worldview, or the Nigerian worldview of cosmology and stuff like that. They still view those things as true. So for us to just go and say, because we start talking about like the whole can you be atheist and be pro-African, or can you be anti-theist and be pro-African? Well, like really and truly, not really, because at the core of it, you're going to embrace a doctrine that's not native to African mindset in the first place. Like, I don't care if you Christian, Muslim, or whatever, like all Africans have traditionally believed in some type of spiritual system. Even if they were just praying to a tree, that still is a deity to them.
Right. Most
So
spiritual
you
place
can't,
on earth.
right. So you can't really say, like, you can't really be anti-theist or atheist, because they defined it, those are two different things. There's atheists and there's anti-theists. Anti-theists are just hate all deities. And actually, the brother Melvin can't find the term, and I didn't even know this term existed. It's a term that says, because you know, we deal with this a lot when people say the atheists or anti-theists, but they only attack the Abrahamic religions, specifically Christianity. There's actually a term that people that just Abrahamic religion. I didn't know that.
No, that's not it's kind of new though. Only saying that gives them towards the Abrahamic faith, not all the rest of them. So yeah, it's kind of being defined now, really.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a term, but it's just weird to me. I'm just like, you know, we just kind of we were just talking about.
That's because people starting to hate the real God. Notice they don't want to hate the other people. They know the God of the Bible real, so they want to be anti him. That's why, to me, in my opinion, that's why, because it's a true God.
And it's just like, man, why we embracing this? If we just get rid of these religions, we'll get better. And I'm like, one, you never gonna get rid of religions, period. I don't care if you don't like the Abrahamic faith. You're not gonna get rid of religions, period, ever. Like, that's just because that's the human. We know this from the biblical worldview that all humans have this disposition to a power greater than them. Now they can accept the one true God or not, or they can accept other gods, but all humans have this understanding that something is greater than them that they have to give honor to or worship or something.
That's the third definition of religion, and that's why it killed me when I heard not just non-believers, but even believers. When they walk around talking about, I'm not religious, that's a lie. Everybody is religious. You can, because everybody subscribe extreme importance to something. I don't care if that's your mama, your daddy, your car, like you said, people worshiping trees, whatever. Everybody has that. So when people walk around talking about that they're not religious, it kind of, I can't fight everybody and comment on every post, but it kind of irritates me, and it just lets me know that, well, these people don't even know what the word religious means, and to me, people are following a trend when they say that they're not religious. They just heard somebody else say it, so now they're regurgitating it. But in all honesty, everybody has a religion. Every single person on this earth subscribe to something of extreme importance. Period. But hey, people ignorant, man.
And you know, in the chat, I posted either yesterday, I posted, Mike Heiser dropped a video, and it was funny because it actually ties into your debate coming up on Saturday, and then your kind of pre-warm up that you had with Chris, the whole thing about the Canaanites and the stuff like that. And Mike Heiser, who is I'm gonna say this to anybody, who is a scholar in this field, like not only a scholar, but like a top scholar, like he speaks and knows all these ancient languages and his worldview. So he knows much better than anybody else. I don't care who comes on here and say they think they know. Like, Heiser is going to know way more when it comes to that stuff. And he literally breaks down in their like 8-minute video. He breaks down the same stuff that kind of we talked about. It's like, no, it's not really just God is just going around killing all these people. Like, it's military reasons and it's some spiritual things going on. And Heiser breaks down, and I don't want to mess up anybody. They can go watch it for themselves. And I know you got the debate coming up on Saturday, but basically the things that Chris and even Pianki may have said in that pre-debate talk that you guys had, like, he basically debunks all that in like 8 minutes. Oh yeah, which I knew it was. I'm just like literally in that debate, if you just in the midst of after Chris says what he has to say, if you just press play on Heiser for the next 8 minutes, he literally just debunks everything that he just laid out.
And see, I'm gonna bring it by the time y'all hear this video, it should come out Tuesday. I've been and had the debate the previous Saturday before that. But like you're saying, bro, I'm gonna pull up all these scholars that I have. I might not have time to get to every last scholar that I have, but I kept telling them inside the pre-debate, no scholar agrees with you on that aspect. No New Testament or Near East first century scholar or ancient Near East scholar, all of them disagree with you on that, bro. And I'm just gonna pull a few of them out this Saturday just to show him, because you know how they like to say, as soon as we say something, oh, you making something up, or oh, you twisting something. Well, when I show you 3 or 4 or 5 different scholars who's saying the same thing, then you can't say I'm twisting nothing. This is scholarship. And
Right.
inside the debate that we're having this Saturday coming up, which is going to be pretty much last Saturday by the time this video drops.
Right.
To me, he just don't have no understanding on that, and I'm not going to turn this into a Bash Chris video.
Right.
I respect and much love to my brother, but for him to claim to be some kind of historian or as knowledgeable as he is, I'm gonna give him the same 3 instances that I said previously. Either the brother know this stuff and he's gonna come out and lie, or he's being disingenuous, or he's ignorant of these facts. One of the 3, man. You know, it is what it
Yeah,
is.
bro. And that's the crazy part when like I say, when you lean on people that's like experts in the field that then like had their hand in the dirt and really like learning this stuff, and it's just like Heiser, for example, just telling you basically this idea that God in the Old Testament was just this evil warlord who was just trying to kill babies and stuff like that. Like, no, there was an actual spiritual reason why he was doing this stuff, and he didn't kill. And we said it before, they didn't go and kill anybody and everybody. Like it wasn't just like, oh, we just gonna wipe the whole land. Like, he gave people opportunities to leave and all that. So it's just it's just bro. It's just weird.
It's like you, Byron. It's like if you said, "Hey, nobody, I just bought the new 2020 Benz, man. That must cost me an arm and a leg." I'm not gonna think that you're a double amputee. That's hyperbole, man. Like that. And I know a lot of these dudes be reading the Bible again, like I said in the prelim, with a 21st century mind frame.
Exactly.
They don't think about how these words would have been received from the people of that day. You know what I'm saying? And to me, I mean, it's simple. All you gotta do is just go look up the culture of that time. I mean, it's no different than somebody who looking up our culture today. We have slang words. We have words that mean something else in another context, but mean something different in our slang. You know, when we're talking to each other. We have that same stuff in the Bible. You know, we have hyperbole talk. We have over fashion talk, but some people, I don't know, they like to make it like every time we break down one of those scriptures, again, they make it like, oh, we just making stuff up. No, this is what the scholars say that this stuff say. We follow scholarship. I don't know if y'all just following a man on YouTube or something, but we following scholars over here. You know what I'm saying?
And bro,
that's how
the disappointing part of it all is that they try to take, like you said, they try to take the context out of its context. Like it's during that time within the first the Old Testament time period. Like, there's a worldview going on. There's this kind of kill or be killed mindset going on amongst all the nations, right? Like, I tell people all the time, like, they're like, well, why the Bible don't go into in depth? Well, guess what? Like, when Genesis was written, they was talking about like the beginning of the world and creation. Like, they wasn't gonna go into like atoms and cells and reproductive cycles of different things. Like because they didn't have that worldview understanding. And
that wasn't the purpose, though. That wasn't the purpose either. That wasn't the
right. And it wasn't the purpose. And even and think about it, bro. Like, think about when God gave it to Moses to write all this stuff. It's like, okay, so I want you to write how atoms split and cells reproduce, and how plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, and you breathe in oxygen and breathe. Like, Moses would have been like, God, what are you talking about? Like, I like, because that wouldn't even, like, he didn't have that understanding. We do. And so when God, even when the Holy Spirit works with us today, like, we had that understanding, but God deals with the people in the time period. And so you can't go and say, just say, oh, well, what about, because they talked about what about the slavery and this, that, and the third? And like, one is servitude, slavery, 2 different things. You can't put chattel slavery in America and put it back in biblical time period. And it's not saying that people weren't in servitude. And then we know over time that God has revealed throughout time that this is not his purpose. And I tell people all the time, the prime example when it comes to polygamy, like, God's purpose was not for men and women to have multiple wives and multiple husbands.
Right.
Even though when it happened, you never see God saying like, okay, this is cool for y'all to do, and I want y'all to do this. He allowed it, and then he worked his way through it. As a matter of fact, one of the scholars said, you look in the biblical narrative, anytime somebody had multiple wives, it ended up being a problem.
Every time.
Every single time. So 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 even then it's like, bro, it's probably not a good idea. And then as we go on, we're getting to learn, because I tell people you got to read the whole Bible. Like, you don't just read the Old Testament and say, see, look in Numbers, ABC and this happened. Okay, but what does it say in Romans? What does it say in Timothy? What does it say in Peter? You have to keep on going, because we have a whole revelation of the whole Bible. We're not just listening to Old Testament, but you have to keep on going. Like, and it's crazy because you see people, attackers of Christian narrative, I always go, well, see, this what y'all God doing. This is what he did in the Old Testament. This is what he doing. Like, you don't understand what is the literature poetry? Is it, like, what's the context? What's the type of literature? What's going on? And B, even in that revelation, okay, that's cool. You want to say that happened and you don't like that, whatever. Keep reading the Bible and see what's going on. Does it condone it? Because at the end of the day, because the God of the Old Testament, guess who's the God in the New? And I always tell people this. Guess who's the God of the New Testament? Jesus Christ.
Jesus. And that's what and notice when Jesus came, he got on the Pharisees. And who was the Pharisees have been? The Pharisees would have been the people who were living under the Mosaic law, who was doing stuff out of whack. And that's why, like you said, that's why, like, you got to read the whole Bible, because even though people in the Old Testament was doing things, that don't mean that that's the way God meant it to do. Even Jesus himself came on there and said, "Oh, y'all being hypocrites. Y'all doing it this way. The Bible say do it this way." Jesus said that out his mouth. So just because you see some kind of sin or polygamy or any of that, Jesus came and cleared all that stuff up. One man, one wife. If you're gonna do this, you're supposed to have one. If you're gonna do this, you need to be like this. If you're gonna judge somebody, do this. He came and said it straight, but that just goes to show whether Hebrew Israelites or people following the Hebrew Roots movement, or whether non-believers, they don't get that the Bible is a whole. You can't just, like you said, you can't just read one verse over here and be like, hey, look. No, get the whole concept of it. But ignorance, bro. Ignorance.
Right, because think about it, bro. If you just read the Genesis narrative, when Cain killed Abel and then Cain wasn't killed, see, God says God just let people just kill their brothers and say it's okay. He ain't gonna do nothing for it. It's like, bro, read the whole Bible and read what actually happened to Cain. Y'all just coming up. When people do that, I'm like, you just coming up with stuff, bro. Like you reading into the text and you picking stuff out. And you acting like Cain just had it easy. After he killed Abel, like, no, bro, he had to be out here, like, he was bad out here, like,
couldn't even settle. He couldn't settle nowhere. Had to keep moving, keep going. Build city, keep moving. Build a city, keep moving. He can have no rest. So they all die. Like who wanna not buy a house and get your wife and get your kids and settle down for the next 30, 40, 50, 60? He couldn't do none of that. He had to keep going, keep moving.
Exactly. But if you just stay right there, then you don't have a chance to read the whole Bible. And it just, I don't know, bro. It's just weird. It's just like, and that's why I tell people, like, man, you got to be careful. Like, just because the worst people to read the Bible and interpret it are A, who not educated on the Bible, and B, those who are enemies of the Bible. Because enemies of the Bible will go and eisegete the text and tell you, see, this is what it's saying. This is what it's saying. And that's why, like, even the discussion that you had with Chris, I was like, okay, can you show me some ancient commentaries on the Bible that agree with what you said? Because there's no ancient commentaries that agree on what you're saying right now. And if you remember, and Chris hear this, hey, brother, I'll have to call you out. This is the truth. Chris said that, oh, hold on, I can pull up this. I can pull this up right here. He said the Midrash. I think he was talking about the Jewish commentary, the Midrash, but he never pulled it up. And I knew.
He went to go pull up. He went to go pull up the early church fathers, and they end up saying exactly what I said. They said.
And I was like, because there's no Jewish or early church fathers that would agree on what you just said in that commentary of those verses. So that's when he said, like, I'm gonna pull up the Jewish commentary, and I just kind of sat back when I typed it. I'm like, okay, I want to see you pull this out and see what it has to say on what the Jewish commentary is. Yeah, he must have read it and realized, like, oh no, it don't say that. And and as a Christian, we look at the early church fathers. They got buku commentaries on all this stuff, and they tell you, like, no, bro, like this is not what's going on. So I'm just wondering, and that's always my question when people come to that. I'm like, okay, that's good. How did you come to that conclusion, and why is your conclusion different from the people who were closer in time, who wrote commentaries on this stuff, and like who lived this stuff and was in and out? Like, I just want to honestly know. Like,
I love when you do that, bro. I love when you do that. No, the first time you did it, first time you did it, he said you was committing a logical fallacy. No, he just asking you, how did you come to the conclusion? That ain't no fallacy. Like, you be putting dudes in corners, man. They can't get out of it.
Because look, it's cool that you can show me all the stuff on the Egyptian text and Sumerian text that, like, see, this is before the Bible and this, then the third. And like, hey, well, if you know anything about the Bible was written, the Bible was finally written or codified in you know, they said the Babylonian period, but the oral history was taken down by Moses already and passed down.
Yeah.
So even the Bible tradition doesn't say that these things that these other texts, that the Egyptian text or the Sumerian text are older. Yeah, didn't have truth or was older, because they just going to see this was written down. And it's interesting when I hear people say that. See, the Bible wasn't written down until this, and so the pyramids, it was written down in this, and I'm like, that's writing. And if you know anything about historical narratives, there's oral history and there's written history, and oral is always first. Always come first. So if you want to tell me that the Egyptians and the Sumerians or whatever had a writing system before the Hebrews, okay, like I don't, that's fine. But you can't date the oral history. Like this was their oral history passed down, and now you're trying to like say, oh, well, see, they stole it from here and stole it from there, and I'm like, that's interesting. That's why I always say that's interesting. Can you show me any ancient writers or commentaries that say the Hebrew narrative was stolen from the Egyptians or stolen from the Sumerians? Or is it better to say that, because, hey, we can just say it like this: leave the Bible out of it. The Egyptian narrative, the Ethiopian narratives, and the Sumerians and Babylonian narratives are all similar, right?
Yeah.
Just take the Bible out of it. So are we gonna say the Sumerians and the Ethiopians and Egyptians stole from each other, or are we gonna say that they were similar? There were similar events that happened that they all recorded or remembered.
That's
based on their own kind of worldview, and they when they recorded it, they did it based on their own tradition and worldview. So therefore, whatever story that may have happened, like in ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt, like it may be similar, but some differences. You're not gonna say one stole from the other. You're gonna say, dang, they must have had like a event that happened. Like here, like I tell people all the time, like the most recent thing that happened here, the biggest thing that happened in America was 9/11. Like as far as world history, right? There are people who were there on 9/11 who in New York who can tell you what happened, but they got people who were at the Pentagon in DC who can tell you what happened, and then they can tell you like, or you in Texas was like, well, I watched it on TV and this is what I saw. So all three narratives are true. But at the same time, they're from different perspectives, telling you different stories and what the experiences were like. And that's common. But it seems like when it comes to like the biblical narratives, like every time it's in the Bible, oh, they stole it from here, here. And I'm like, well,
and watch it. Ain't it funny how they say, oh, well, the Noah's flood wasn't true, but then we look at all the ancient places that would have been around at that time, and they all have a similar flood story. Like, come on, man. They all talking about the same story, man. I don't care if the character's name changed or this. They all are describing a worldwide flood. But then y'all sit up here and say, we don't have no proof. We got all these writings from every ancient, these people didn't even know each other. So how they all describing the same flood story, even if they are using different names or different viewpoints? Like, come on, man. But it goes back to what you said. When it comes to the Bible, rather than them saying, oh, okay, well, this part lines up with what we hear over here in history. Now it's stolen. Like, come on, man.
And this is another side thing that happens. And actually Nefer, so shout out to Nefer, by the way, and prayers up to her, because I know she just announced that she got she's dealing with her second bout of cancer. So prayers up to her.
Shout out to you, sister. We praying for you, sis.
Amen. But she actually about a year or two ago, she went through a whole, like, it's probably still on her Facebook page too. She got a whole series on all of the ancient artifacts that support the biblical narrative. And so when people say, well, you know, like even when Chris was like, you know, all this stuff is this mythology, this didn't exist. I'm like, bro, like we have actual artifacts that corroborate the stories. Like we got Abraham's what's the thing they use? I forgot the term they use, but it's what they were buried in. Where are his bones at? Well, if you know anything about there he is. We got the ossuaries, right? Like we know this stuff, and then even with that, even with all of us having these archaeological evidences, let's look at what's going on today. Do you think anybody can honestly just go into go into Israel and Palestine today and just dig up stuff?
Nope. Yep. Nope.
No,
Nope. They
no,
got
you
laws
can't.
against it. Yeah.
They got laws. They will. Man, they will literally take your head off, like in
Oh,
real life. So it's not one of the things like, okay,
Imagine somebody trying to come to your house that you pay rent on or that you got paid off and saying, "Hey man, let us dig right here real quick." No, nigga, go on somewhere.
no, exactly. And especially not, especially like right. If anybody see the news, what's going on in like that region right now, bro? That's a hotbed right now. So you got they got people going to war. You telling me like, oh well, I want to go dig up and see if we can find the ancient some evidence of ancient Solomon, and let's dig this up. They're gonna look at you like, if you got 3 seconds to get out of here, and I'm on number 2 before I let this AK go.
Why is it that people think that proof is only archaeological? No, manuscript evidence is evidence as well. They like to overlook the manuscript evidence and say, well, we don't have no proof of this or proof of that because you haven't found nothing archaeological. Well, that's not how historians do things. Now, us finding archaeological evidence can further confirm the manuscript evidence, but not finding anything archaeological does not debunk the manuscript evidence, and people don't like to talk about that. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, we have no evidence of Julius Caesar. We have no evidence of Plato, Aristotle. We have no evidence of Hannibal of Carthage outside of manuscript narrative. We have no evidence of these people existing. We don't have the bones. We don't have their burial sites.
And
we don't have the tombs or none of it. Nobody doubt their existence, right? And so it's even with Egypt, the normal palette and normal. We don't have his bones. All we do is have a palette of a story, a manuscript. Yeah. That's what it is. It's a manuscript. So we have no evidence of these people. But all of a sudden, like, they didn't exist. So I get to say now that Norma didn't exist. I get to say that.
I don't want to do that though. And see, this is the conclusion of historians. Historians say, for us to say that Jesus didn't exist, we would have to say every single person from antiquity didn't exist, seeing that we have more manuscript evidence for Jesus than any other person from antiquity. So people don't want to throw out them other people, but they don't know that that's what they're doing by denying Jesus or other people in the Bible existences that we do have manuscript for. You would have to say nobody in history existed then, but you don't want to go that far, right? You don't want to go that far. You know what I'm saying?
And while you said that, I want to say this. Sarnetta does this a lot, and I see a lot of people in the conscious community start to do this a lot. Stop asking Christians if Jesus Christ existed, where the bones? Why would we have the bones of Jesus? Like, as a Christian, why would I say that with the bones of Jesus Christ? Like, bro, if you ask me that means you don't even know the tenets of Christianity. Like, you don't even know a basic study. If you asking a Christian,
Jesus, that would disprove Christianity right there.
Exactly. That's the whole point. So, like, if I'm a Christian, why would I sit here and subscribe to the notion that there's the bones of Jesus? Like, where the bones at? Do you know the tenets of Christianity? Like, why would there be bones of Jesus around? Like, you be better ask like anybody else, but you gonna ask me where the bones of Jesus?
Y'all don't find them.
Like, we got his tomb. We know where his tomb was. We know where other people that, like, we know where, like, the bones of, like, Peter is. We know the bones of Paul. We know where they buried it. But now you're gonna see him and say, tell us Jesus as a Christian? Like, come on, bro. Like when people say that, I just look at it like, bro, you're not even being faithful.
They show you that they just regurgitate something they heard, bro. That's a perfect example to show that these people do not do research or studying. They just regurgitate their favorite, whoever their favorite YouTuber is, who's not a believer. They just regurgitate what they said because they feel that whoever they listening to have done the research that they never did. You know what I'm saying?
I hate it. If he is a historical person, where his bones at? Well, I'm a Christian, so I don't. One, why would I say that you can find Jesus Christ's bones? Because, like you just said, if there was evidence of Jesus Christ's bones, that disproves Christianity. It's true. Two, where the bones at? And I always ask people, where everybody else's bones? Well, we go to Pharaoh. You can't find all of Pharaoh's bones. That's a lie. You can find some of them.
Archaeological experts in archaeology. Archaeology. I'm sorry. They say that we don't have bones or tombs for 99.9% of the people who walk this earth. So asking for a single person like me and you, we don't know where our great grandmama buried at. I don't have no clue. I don't even know her name. So how can you say go? And this is just a couple of 100 years ago. but you asking for bones from people 2,000, like sit down somewhere. Like they don't study history, they don't study archaeology, they don't. Some of them don't even know the methods of how historians determine if somebody was real or not. They don't even know the methods that archaeological people use to determine if this is real or that's not real. They just regurgitate something they heard, bro, because
Exactly,
they hate
bro.
God so much, bro. Like they hate God so much. They
And
look for
they don't
any reason.
they don't realize that when we do find people's bones, it's not because of some special nature of how they was buried or
Right.
anything like that. It's literally from the geography. Like I always tell people, like what makes Egypt special is not because of their embalming or mummification process. It's because of the geography of Egypt. It is much easier to preserve things that you try to preserve because everybody, like we go to ancient, and I said that we go to ancient Aztecs. Like you can find their tombs. They ain't got no the mummies are disintegrated, but you can find all their jewels and stuff like that. And when we do find people, like when we find like people in Antarctica or the Arctic that were frozen, it's because of the conditions. They were frozen. Like that's why we're able to find their bodies. It's not because they have some specialness about them. It's the condition. So even when you do find the bones of different people groups, like don't make it like it's some special unique thing to them. It's the geography that allows you to do to do as much. And like we said before, we have the ossuaries of a lot of the ancient Israelite people because it wasn't their custom to preserve the bodies like that. They would keep it. They would keep it there. They would keep it there for a year and then move it on to a different place, bro. And
they
so,
don't get that,
like,
bro. They don't get that.
Like,
and some of them actually don't get that. Actually, finding Egyptian mummies disproves the Egyptian religion. They don't even get that because since they finding those mummies, that means that them coming back to life to find their body wasn't true. But they don't think like that
at all. So that's what it baffles me sometimes, like the goalposts being moved when they do that. And the number one thing, you know, this when I had the conversation we was on the channel with Metu, like don't speak of ancient Kemet and speak of Africa as synonymous. That's the worst thing. That's the worst thing you can do when you say that. Well, you know, ancient Kemet. I'm like, bro, that ancient Kemet is not all of Africa because we like you talking about all of Africa. You just saying, well, the African people thought about this stuff, but that might be true for Kemet, but that's not that's not true for people who from South Africa or say they're from the West African region or North Africa or East Africa. What about people from ancient from Ethiopia, Aksum or Tanzania? Like those people, they don't care nothing about those people. They're always like, well, the ancient Egypt. I'm like, look, ancient Egypt was a great civilization. I'm not saying it wasn't. It's a beacon for us to look at it as one of the ancient great civilizations in Africa. But just because ancient Egypt moved left, don't mean everybody else in Africa moved left.
That's right.
Like as a matter of fact, we got evidence that the other African nations that surrounded Egypt would go to war with them. And so you know, this whole idea like, oh well, you know, they didn't act like this and act like that. I'm like, well, that ain't what the Egyptians put on their walls.
That's romanticizing, bro. Like all of them like to romanticize, and they always come at like, you've been in this community as long as I have, and you know that Christians started coming in this community because we were being attacked first. And it seemed like every time we say something about Egypt, they make it like we're attacking Egypt. No, we're not attacking Egypt. We're attacking your false notion of trying to romanticize Egypt. We love Egypt and Africa and black people and all that stuff too. We only addressing y'all because we can find way more videos of y'all calling Christians liars or haters or stupid or dumb or we don't do research. But then when y'all talk to one of us, come to find out, we know more about the Bible than you do. We know more about Egypt than you do. We know more about your religion than you do. I'm talking about people like the Metus and all these New Age, you know, Comedics and Aboriginals and all that. Y'all call us so dumb, but then when we come out here and show scholarship, then all of a sudden, why y'all attacking us? How come y'all making videos about us? Well, y'all just made 20,000 videos about Christians. We made 2 videos about y'all. All of a sudden,
now
y'all
mad. And now you mad. Like we don't talk about and you know just as much as I know, as Christians, as real Christians, and I said this other time, we battling against white supremacist Christians on
Thank
the other
you.
side because they
Way before
dismissing
they was
the
even existed.
yeah, wait, they even today they dismiss African contributions, and we know like historically, if it wasn't for that's why I would say I got love for Egypt because if it wasn't for Egypt, the gospel which wouldn't have been able to spread the way it needed to because it was first the Bible was actually when it was finally written, the first Bible was written in Egypt. Like
Yeah.
the first Christian school in the world was in Egypt. So how can I sit here and say that I don't have love for Egypt as a Christian when there's a lot of gratitude and debt that we owe to the Egyptian Christians?
They don't know
So
that, bro. That's why they
they
don't know.
don't know
Like,
that. They think
if
we
you
at
look
war
at
with them.
if you look at now, a lot of people I know who left the Bible, they left the Bible under the notion that the Bible was a white man's religion. Now that Christians have came out and started showing the African contributions to the Bible, look at what a lot of them doing now. A lot of them turning atheists, a lot of them turning agnostic. I've yet to meet a non-believer who don't believe in the Bible for the original reason why they left the Bible. All of them just keep going down the rabbit hole. Once some get debunked, they just move to the next. They get debunked, they just move to the next. And it's again, it go back to the biblical verse that says, "Ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth." Because it's like once you left the Bible for your original reason, once that got debunked, something inside you should have been like, "Well, hold on, let me go restudy this a little more to kind of get a better grasp." They didn't do that. A lot of these people, when they were Bible believers, they didn't do no studying at all. They're doing more studying now as a non-believer as to find out why they don't want to believe in the Bible than they ever did when they was believing in the Bible to see why the Bible was true. It's like, y'all,
So
I don't know, man.
and the thing is they attack, and this is the weird thing, especially those who lean towards Kemet. You attack black Christians of this whitewashing thing, living in white man's religion, but you don't attack the quote unquote the white man for him basically whitewashing ancient Egypt for decades. For decades, literally, we have evidence of them going on the walls of Kemet and literally painting the figures, lighting them up to make them look white. We know that they already would have books and narratives basically saying that the Egyptians were essentially Caucasoid people with a tan. Like, and don't let me get started on all like the movies that came out of people from Egypt, the Charleston Heston, Ten Commandments, the Cleopatra movie, and all stuff like that. That like literally the only movie that in my lifetime that really depicted Egyptians as being melanated people was the animated Prince of Egypt movie that came out, back in the day. That's still one of my favorite ones. And guess who was mad at that movie? It wasn't black people. It was white people mad at that because they felt that Pharaoh and even the Hebrews was too dark.
See?
Come on, bro. Like,
who was the first people to bring whitewashing to the attention of America in the first place? That were Christians that did that. That wasn't Egypt. That wasn't atheism. That was us that did that. But like you said, we don't get no credit as being black, as being African American or black believers in the Bible. For people that claim to be pro-black, why do they diss us so much when we've contributed to our struggle or just to our culture or history here in America more than any other belief system in the world? It's really hypocritical to me. It's disingenuous. And that's why I always tell people, I've never met anybody who've disproven the Bible. I meet people who argue against it. I meet people who are skeptical. I've never met one person or even heard one argument that debunks the Bible. Not one.
Not one. And like you said, it's just one of the things that when I tell people, when your problem with Christianity, you don't have a problem with Christianity, the tenets of the faith. Like you don't. Most people do not have an issue with the tenets of the faith. I don't see how you can. Like in all truth and honesty, I don't see how you can. You may have an issue maybe when it comes to Jesus being the savior, but like I said before, most religions have some type of God savior concept within their paradigm anyway. So it's not a big. Them even having that concept is not new for them. The issue most people have with Christianity is literally the whitewashing of it. Well, guess what? Like you just said, black Christians in America have been debunking that. As a matter of fact, in Africa and in the Middle East, they've been debunking that before black Christians did. So it's like, how do you? So you got black Christians in America saying that it's not debunking the whitewashing. You got African Christians basically debunking the whole whitewashing. You got Middle Eastern Christians debunking the whitewashing. But yeah, you still to this day in 2021. In the year of y'all Lord, 2021, y'all still here saying, you see, that's the white man. And that ain't nothing but but them were just lighter skinned people. They white people, and that's all and stuff like that. The Greeks made it up. And I'm saying, bro, see what you say. The Greek, why would the Greeks and the Romans make a religion that they persecuted?
And they already had their own.
And they already had their own that they hated.
Why would Greek mythology is more closer to Egyptian mythology than it is the Bible? So
exactly.
Why would they give up their mythology for Christianity? And like you said, that was prosecuted. Like, how can people just straight skip over the 500 to thousands of years of the way Romans was just killing? I mean, not thousands, but hundreds of years. I mean, the way Romans was just killing Christians. Like, how can you overlook that and then say, well, they created it? These people don't know what they be talking about, bro. They just be regurgitating stuff they heard somewhere, man, because they don't actually do the research themselves, man.
Well, see, it was created so they can, like, any historian tell you, like, Christianity is actually one of the reasons why the Roman Empire fell to begin with. So it's like, so the Romans created something that was their downfall, and that they were trying to kill people on, like really, like, and I was telling people, like, okay, think that through. Well, it was the Greeks came up with it. So how did the Greeks come up with it? Because when Christianity came, anybody who was Greek was under Roman persecution anyway. So
how do they read the Bible? How do they read the Bible? And they see Hebrew, Israelite, and still say the Greeks came up with it. Like, that's stupid. It's the Israelite. It's just dumb.
It makes no sense. And if you know anything about history, the Hebrews went to war. Even if you don't subscribe to it, but if you read Maccabees, which is still a historic narrative, the Maccabees went to war with the Greeks. The Maccabees were Hebrews that went to war with the Greeks because the Greeks were disrespecting the synagogue and making them sacrifice pigs in the temple. And if anybody know anything about Hebrew religion or the Old Testament religion, you know pigs is a big no-no, let alone sacrificing pigs in the temple. And that's why you get the Hanukkah. Hanukkah comes from that whole narrative or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they
don't know
days. So when they say that stuff, I'm like, bro, do you know what you're saying? Like, what are you talking about?
Ignorance at its finest, bro. Like, that's one reason why I couldn't stay in the conscious community. That's one reason why I couldn't stay an atheist and I couldn't stay Israelite. It's like you literally have to dumb yourself down to believe that stuff. And people like to make it seem like Christians are dumbed down or we don't know, but actually nowadays when we look at it, we see that Christians have more knowledge and information than half of y'all, because y'all just be regurgitating pseudo stuff, and we can tell. I'm gonna say this again to listening audience. We can tell when y'all haven't researched a certain subject. Believe it or not, we can tell based off the first couple of sentences that you make about the subject. Like, how do somebody expect? Like if your job is to if your goal is to stop me from being a Christian, or to at least give me information that you believe is true that'll make me stop being a Christian, how can you do that by lying to me? Like, that's stupid,
Bro, I had a conversation with a Hebrew before, and he was telling me about, like, everybody in the New Testament was Hebrew anyway, and I was like, okay, well, explain to me the Ethiopian unit, which Ethiopia, will he be for Ethiopia or Nubia? Because scholars disagree and have, but either way, he African. Let's just say that he black, he African. We know that based off the narrative. Well, he was really a Hebrew, and I said, bro, you do realize, like, in the biblical narrative, the only people who they name that are not Hebrews but have Hebrew lineage in the New Testament are Samaritans. Samaritans are the only people that have a Hebrew lineage, but they don't necessarily call them Hebrews, and it's only because they live in Samaria. When they mention the Ethiopian eunuch out of the Kandaki's court, that's an African. He is not a Hebrew. So you can't go around, and I know you heard this before, like trying to make Gentile. Well, Cornelius, he was actually Hebrew. See, Gentiles mean this, like, bro, like you really, like you said, you gotta dumb yourself down, and you gotta twist up the narrative to make it say something that the text don't say, the commentaries don't say, and it's like at that point, like, bro, you just it's almost like you trying to fit something in there.
King James is black.
Bro, and even that, and see, this is why I don't understand it. And this is all no disrespect to my Hebrew brothers and sisters, because I got love for you. I'm not saying that you got every right to choose whatever ethnicity that you want to claim. You got the right to choose that. That's not on me for me to judge. But when you but your talking points, if you and Brother Berean be trying to like put people on game about this. If you look at
Shout out
British
to Berean.
Israelism, shout out to Berean. If you look at British Israelism, every talking point that is in British Israelism is literally regurgitated with a black face amongst the black Hebrew Israelite community, and I don't think they even realize it. The whole King James was black because in British Israelism, Anglophone people are the true Israelites, and King James was like the ace boon coon of the Israelite people, and so King James was an Israelite. Well, guess what black Hebrew Israelites say? Well, I can't say he Anglo, but I'm gonna say he a black Israelite. So I'm gonna say he Israelite, but he black too. So y'all gonna keep him being an Israelite, whether he be British Israelites or black Hebrew Israelites, but y'all just changing the color of the people. It's the same narrative.
It's a black
bro,
KKK. It's a black KKK, man, and they don't even know some of their same talking points come from that ideology, thinking that you're superior than the next person based off of your skin color and that everybody else is inferior. So that's how we got whitewashed.
And the thing is like in both scenarios, if you read the New Testament, your Hebrew narrative or background does not matter in the New Covenant. Like I'm not. Let me say, when it comes to salvation or your special place, like you can still be Hebrew. I'm not saying you don't matter, but I'm saying like it's not in the same way as the New Covenant, to where people got to become Hebrews in order to be in the Old Covenant. In the New Covenant, no, you got to believe on you got to believe on the Messiah, and then you become a new creature.
Amen.
I don't care. So I don't care if you a Hebrew, like Paul said, like I'm a Hebrew of the Hebrews, and I still gotta submit to the Son of God. Like so, it don't matter. Like, and that's when people
all things to all people. Like if I'm a Hebrew, I'm gonna be a Hebrew. If I'm a Gentile, I'm gonna go over and do what the Gentiles do. It's because it's about saving souls, not necessarily again like brother Byron said. We're not disrespecting your culture or who you perceive to be. But like Paul said, none of that matter, because if you're not using that to win people to Christ, then it's really irrelevant,
Right. And Paul was such a bad boy. Paul was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. He was what we would call either a doctor or lawyer today, based on his education within the Hebrew narrative. He was mistaken. He was a Roman citizen, right? And he was also mistaken for an Egyptian. And then he wrote to the Gentile church. Come on, bro.
Dagger.
Come on, bro. Like, don't tell me like can't, because I always tell when people say that, I said, bro, you can't out Hebrew Paul. What? I said, bro, you can't. Like, I don't care what you say. You can't out Hebrew Paul. And look at all these 9 Hebrew narratives that Paul got. He still was like, nah, gotta follow Christ. And then it's just like y'all forget that they had a whole council in Jerusalem. A whole council basically saying like, no, we're not gonna make it like we're not gonna make Gentiles be circumcised and become Hebrews. They said all they said is, and I'm just kind of going up top of the dome, don't eat meat that's been sacrificed to the gods, don't eat blood, and a few other things. But basically saying, man, do your whole thing, do your whole culture. And this is why we have the conversations with our African-minded brothers and sisters. It's like, no, bro, you don't have to be European to be a Christian. You don't have to be a Hebrew to be a Christian. As a matter of fact, if you look at the history of Christianity, all people still kept their culture and traditions, but they all they did is just contextualize and personify it to Christ. Now, some things do they have to give away? Sure. If your culture was doing child sacrifices, guess what? They got to go. I'm sorry, that's got to go. And even today, love to my African brothers and sisters. Guess what? In certain places in Africa, when twins are born, one twin has got to be killed because it's illegal. Well, guess what? Christianity would be like, no, we don't kill twins. We don't kill. Or some cultures, like in the Roman culture, if you was a child and you was born with a birth defect, you was dead.
Yeah.
Like they threw you away like you was trash. Like real talk.
See, I would have been dead if it wasn't for America embracing these Christian views, because I was born with birth defects. So see, thank God I was born in America at this time period while Christianity was around.
you would have been tossed away. And some African people still do it. In some cultures in Africa right now, if you born as an albino, right? Like those people were killed and they use their bones as like some magic dust and stuff like that. Like this is real talk. These are real things, and it's no diss against Africa, because I can find the same issues in Europe, in ancient America, and all stuff. So it's no diss against my African people. What I'm saying is that the Bible is going to rectify the things that are wrong, and then personify the things that are correct. So they're not telling you that you can't be African and be Christian, but what they are saying is that no, if you're born as albino, you still are born in the image of God, and you still are worthy to be saved, and your life does matter. And so we're not gonna kill you and turn your body into magic dust. Or if you're born with a birth defect, we're not gonna just throw you away like you yesterday's trash because you don't fit the narrative. Like, no, bro, you a living being. Like, these are things that that personify within Christianity, within different cultures. But for some reason in America, it's always like, to be Christian, you gotta be white, or to be Christian, you gotta be European. And I'm like, you can't say that to the black church, because anybody who know the black church is like, we've been fighting against that since we got here. Like, even when black people became Christians, even in the slave narratives, we know they had hush harbors and would go and they would reject what the master was trying to teach them and go read the Bible for themselves.
I brought it up. Yep. I brought that in my debate with Captain 10K, and I didn't even get to go through half my slides so I can read from the slaves themselves, who just said the exact same thing you said, word for word. They said it word for word, bro.
So we got slave narratives, and not even just the famous ones like Frederick Douglass and some of the other ones, but we got other ones that's not even as famous, that basically saying when they looked at Christianity and they looked at how white people were doing Christianity, they was like, nah, white people not doing it right. The slave master's not doing it right. If you was a real Christian, you would let all your slaves go. You was a real Christian, but you're not a real Christian. And they would call them out. Like they would.
They didn't have Google. They didn't have biblical commentaries. They was able to read the same text we reading today and see that, oh, these slave masters ain't doing what this Bible says. And isn't it funny how dudes in 2021, you got Google, you got a phone, you got a computer, you got every means of way to look stuff up, and you still putting out these false notions. And even our slave ancestors, some who couldn't even read but had to have the Bible read to them, could read this stuff or either hear this stuff and know that what the slave master was doing was totally different than what the text said. It's crazy, bro.
So when you talking about the black church, bro, it's just like, bro, you don't accuse the black church of being European. Do we speak European languages? Sure. But do we have the same mindset of the enslavers and the white supremacists who use African people as free labor and denigrate them and call them as property in this country? No, we do not have that same type of mindset, and we have receipts upon receipts of African peoples going against that. As a matter of fact, we got receipts that some Africans were Christians when they got here, and that's why, like, they were Christians when they got here and revolted. They led revolts again. Look at the revolts of the Congolese, who were Christians when they got here and was like, nah, this ain't Christianity. So even like I was trying to educate you, Bianchi, like, Christian, someone claimed to be a Christian, and then when Europeans seeing somebody else being Christian, that didn't make them like say, oh well, that's my brother, I'm not gonna do nothing wrong to him. They didn't care. But what I can tell you is that we know African Christians led revolts against European slave owners for the mere fact that, like, you were holding up to the tenets of Christianity, and they already knew that they're humanity based on the biblical narrative. But see, Europeans try to tell you, like, oh, well, you're not human based on the Bible. And they was like, nah, actually, the Bible says I'm actually quite human, and I'm made in the image of God. And so y'all can get over this thing. And that's a whole different discussion, because I always have conversations.
And watch number two. Some of the reason why people like Zondervan and those people had to call black people beasts, because you even had some white people saying, hey, these are humans, man. This is not right. That's why they had to come up with the narrative, hey, these ain't humans, man. These are animals. Like, people can't even put
like the Quakers.
Like the Quakers, you know?
Yep.
Like people can't even put two and two together and realize the reason why they called us animals. Now, like my brother Byron said, we totally against. I would even go as, and for lack of a better term, I would even go as far as to say we hate those same people y'all hate too, but as in white supremacies and KKK and all that. We don't hate every white person. We have white brothers and sisters in Christ, but their mind frame are just like ours. They know that we're all equal. They know that we're all human. So people who look at Christians as saying, oh, y'all support white supremacy, y'all up the no. We hate all that stuff too. Christians were the first people to speak against that, black and white Christians. So don't come to us with no, oh, because y'all believe in the Bible, y'all support white supremacy. No, we support white brothers and sisters in Christ, but we do not support any white supremacy, white hate. We don't support none of that mess. The Bible don't support none of that. We don't support that mess, man.
As a matter of fact, and I'm gonna give a quick history lesson. When Georgia was a colony, right, and you had early Methodists in Georgia. Well, John Wesley, who's the founder of the Methodist denomination, he was staunchly against enslaving the Africans and thought the African people deserved their humanity and stuff like that. Well, guess what? One of his partners, and this is why he had a falling off, was George Whitefield. George Whitefield was actually pro-slavery, and George Whitefield and his preaching and his speeches is the reason that Georgia adopted slavery, because Georgia was a penal colony. Georgia was not founded as a slave holding colony or state. It adopted it because of the preaching of a white Christian, but his own friend and superior was like, no, and that's why they fell off with each other, and that's why like even American Methodism in the South and American Methodism in the North and in Europe had this beef for so long, because they were like, no, John Wesley and the Wesleys was like, no, we against this whole thing about enslaving Africans and stuff like that. George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards and people like that was pro-slavery. And so again, like you just said, we got white Christian brothers and sisters that even from the inceptions in the early 1700s was like, no, we don't agree with African people being enslaved or being lesser than and stuff like that. And just because you don't, the reason why you don't know their names is because you don't do the research to find out their names. Because you want to just go to the one narrative.
I'm glad you said that, bro. If these people don't even know American history and it's only been 400 years, how the heck do they think they can speak on history 2,000 years ago? Like, it's just asinine, bro. It's stupid, man. But we finna get ready to close out, bro. You want to give any last words pertaining to the conversation before we close out?
Man, I just appreciate it, bro. This is one of the times I really just had a chance to build. As you know, I got a young family, so my whole a lot of my time I only be able to get spurts here and there, but it was a good time for me to just kind of get a lot of thoughts out. But I appreciate the dialogues that's going on. And shout out to Paradigm Shift 314. Shout out to NoboDy, Trust and Believe the Gospel. Shout out to my brother Jerome. Shout out to everybody, man. Y'all, God bless, man. I just tell people learn more about Christ. I'm always preach Christ crucified. And if you don't use term Christ, you can use Messiah, you can use Mashiach, you can use whatever term you want to. He's still the same God. So it don't really matter to me.
Amen, man. Say, bro, again, man, I appreciate you coming on. Anytime during the week that you're up around about this time, I'm up at this time, man. So anytime you want to jump on her and do a show, of course, I'm free every Saturday and Sunday all day. But during the week, if you up around about this time, that means you started talking earlier, bro. If ever you want to jump on, give your spiel, got something to say, just let me know. We can jump on her and do our thing, man.
Oh man, that happen often, man. Because I got two youngins, so sometimes they be up till 2, sometimes 3 in the morning. So that's
I'm
cool
up,
with me.
Bro. This is the time I'm at work from 12 to 7. So I'll be trying to pass the time anyway, man. So if you up around these times again and you want to just jump on her and chop it up, or you got something specific you want to talk about, just let me know, and we'll do what we did today and go and start the show, man. You know what I'm saying? For the listening audience, y'all know me. I am NoboDy, the host of Trust and Believe the Gospel, with my co-host Jerome, the Conscious Christian Green. That's Mr. Co-host for you. I'm always trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody. Again, I am NoboDy. That is my brother, Byron Washington. This is Paradigm Shift TV 314. And we'll catch y'all in the next one, man. That's peace.
Peace.
Yeah.